Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming to this session today. So today we're going to talk about going from BI to AI and automating your semantic models. So we're going to cover why semantic models are important, what they actually are and are not, and then also how to build, test, and maintain them. We'll try to talk about some of the best practices we've seen from our customers. So real quick, my name's Alec Bialosky. I lead data strategy and customer success at SelectStar. Been with the company for about over 4 years now and spend most of my time working with our prospects and our customers, helping them kind of accomplish their data discovery and governance goals. And more recently, a lot of the work we've been doing is about helping them get to natural language analytics, both prepping their data for it and also creating their semantic models in a scalable fashion. So why are semantic models important? Well, it kind of gets to the heart of like the age-old question of why can't we agree on revenue? And typically, you've got multiple teams calculating metrics in their own way, the nuances of which are oftentimes buried in code, which makes it really hard to understand and replicate how different teams are calculating their metrics. And to unwind that is a lot of manual effort and time that has to go into defining what a metric actually is. And so once you start introducing LLMs and natural language analytics into your environment, this becomes a challenge. And the reason is because I like to think of LLMs as like the dumbest smart kid, right? They're the kid in class who's really, really brilliant, but didn't read the assignment. And the semantic model is basically the context that the LLMs can use. It gives shared meaning regardless of what tool you're using on how your metrics and dimensions are defined and which ones they should be referencing when you ask a question. It helps with query correctness, so it's not inferring or guessing at relationships. And importantly, it gives context for its reasoning. What does a metric mean for your business so that AI can actually explain what's happening, not just show numbers? And ultimately, as you think about rolling out natural language analytics at an enterprise, it gives a foundation for scalable, testable workflows without having to reinvent the wheel every time you want to move to a new use case. You know, I think what we've seen from our customers is that metadata is critical, but it is not enough to accurately roll out natural language analytics. Without the business context in a semantic model, AI doesn't know how your company defines what a customer is or what revenue is or churn and the nuances about your business and the way data works. So I wanted to kind of make this real for you with an example of a metric that our example company uses, which is a payment efficiency score. There's a lot of different ways you could think about calculating payment efficiency. The way we do it is it's a metric that basically looks at how quickly customers pay versus the number of installments and average value of their payments that we normalize on a score from 0 to 100. What's actually happening doesn't matter. The important part is this is the way our company thinks about payment efficiency. So if we look at what happens when we ask AI to analyze this, we can basically say, all right, we want you to calculate, oh, I'm at the end of my video here. I need to be at the beginning. So write a query to calculate payment efficiency. And so using ChatGPT or Claude, it can come up looking at metadata with the right fields, and it can write a query to calculate this information. So when we load this up here, what we'll see is that we've got a query. And this query is basically taking the sum of payment value, dividing by the order value, and coming up with its own way for what payment efficiency is, because it was not defined in the semantic model. And so in this case, ChatGPT said, all right, I know how I would calculate payment efficiency. But if we create a semantic model and give it the context, now it knows how your business will calculate payment efficiency. So if we, well, it's going to get there. Video's a little longer than I thought. So when you turn on a semantic model that has this level of information and then ask the exact same question using the exact same LLM, but now with additional context, it is going to know your definition of payment efficiency. So in 1 second, we'll see. So now we've got our nice score that's looking at the number of order payments and normalizing it on a score of 0 to 100. So that's why the semantic model is so important, because it gives it the guardrails of how your business actually thinks about its metrics. So if we come back over here. All right. So I thought it would be interesting, now that we all agree semantic models are important, to talk briefly about what they are, kind of a quick history of them. So they first started in the 50s, basically computer science theory, as a way to define what a computer program means. 10 years later, we start to see kind of their first production application. US Air Force started using them to improve their manufacturing processes, standardizing ways that people can think about the information in their supply chain. Jump forward another 20 years, we start seeing what I would consider like actual enterprise adoption as organizations start centralizing their data in mainframes and databases. And so now start thinking of like ER models and OLAP cubes and abstracting away the database complexity for your business users. Jump forward another 10, 20 years, and we've got kind of the advent of the cloud, the modern data stack, and the semantic layer starts shifting towards BI tools. Think about things like LookML. We're building a source of truth for business users so that our BI tools can reference and know exactly what our metrics are. And now as we move into the brave new world of AI, it's starting to shift towards LLMs and AI systems. That's what this semantic model is now really referring to, is providing that grounding for LLMs. And the DBT semantic layer and other modern approaches aim to provide a consistent source of truth for both your BI tools, but also now your AI tools. And sort of what you should get when you have semantic models built is trusted answers that are much faster. So you're going to have teams that know exactly how to calculate revenue. And they're going to be calculating it the same way. Maybe you have multiple metrics because teams have a reason to think about them differently, but it's going to be documented. It's going to be well defined. You're going to be able to make decisions faster because now you can just ask what's our pipeline coverage and get results from an LLM immediately versus the old-fashioned way of asking a question in Slack, waiting for an analyst or someone from the data team to pick it up from the queue, do the work, send it back to you. It's going to really speed up the decision-making. It's also going to allow us to shift from being reactive to proactive. You'll be able to use AI to monitor your data, and it will have the context to understand what's important and what isn't, and where you should go for investigating potential issues or alerting you to something that you weren't even aware of. And then importantly, it's going to help you scale your organization with way less chaos. Oftentimes, new hires come in and they have to shadow data people because documentation isn't perfect and they can't find everything. And you're going to be able to just give them the AI assistant that has a semantic model built in, and they'll be able to answer business questions without needing that long ramp period. We have a customer they do a lot of work cross-functionally, and it takes a week of scoping out a project because you need to meet with all the people on the other teams to understand their data model. This is going to solve that problem for them. So one thing, as we start thinking about how to build your semantic model, I wanted to talk about is the difference between a semantic model and a semantic layer. Because I think this is something that sometimes causes confusion and can be used interchangeably, but they're really very different. So I like to think of the semantic model as a blueprint. It's basically telling you sort of the specs of the house that you're going to build or of the data model that you have. It's going to capture the different dimensions or the rooms of the house, if you will. You want to ensure everyone is agreed on the plan before you start building things. You want to make sure everyone's bought in to the context that's in that semantic model. Now, a semantic layer is more like the pipes. It's how data is moving, and it makes the blueprint actually work in practice. It's connecting all of the different pieces so that the water or data, if you want to stay with the analogy, flow into every room and ensures consistency no matter which tool that you plug into your semantic model. So, I think historically people have tried to build these semantic layers, which were important as you're thinking about connecting it to our BI tools, but as you start moving towards AI, it's really more about a semantic model, and you can let the LLMs and AI tools make the decision on where it's going to pull this information from and how it's going to move it around because it has all of the necessary context. So what do we include when we build a semantic model? What should be in it? What shouldn't be in it? You want to start with kind of your entities and dimensions. You want to have the core building blocks, your dates, your geographies, customers, products, whatever is important for your business. But you want to have that at the end of the pipeline, kind of those reporting measures. You also want to have your metric calculation. So again, how do you calculate a convoluted payment efficiency score or churn or revenue or retention? You want to make sure that you have relationships. So how does the LLM know to join different things together when you're asking it to do a cut or a segmentation analysis? And then also any rules in business context. What does it need to know based on your experience as a data professional? Synonyms people might use or nuances to your data. Things that you don't want to include would be raw data, right? We don't want to bring in the source tables or columns that aren't reporting ready. We also don't need the ETL logic or technical details and how you got that data reporting ready. It can cause confusion. And one of the things we're going to talk about is trying to make the semantic model kind of as streamlined as possible to prevent potential hallucinations or wherever there does need to be an inference to infer incorrectly. And similarly, we want to exclude ad hoc metrics. Things that are one-off, aren't standardized for your business, should not be incorporated into the semantic model because, again, it's going to cause potential confusion. And when someone from a different team who doesn't understand the nuance of your ad hoc metric tries to use it, it could cause potential issues. All right, so how do we actually build a semantic model? It's great, we know what's in it, but how do we go about building it? Well, it starts with process more than tools, right? We need to understand the business questions that we want to answer. What are the teams we're trying to empower, and what are the questions they're looking at? And again, we want to keep our semantic models streamlined. So it's okay to have multiple semantic models. Modern tools like Snowflake Intelligence are going to be able to grab different ones and use them in concert to answer a single question. But you want to have it streamlined and kind of built out by domain or subject matter area. And so thinking about what data do we need to answer these questions. Then you need to align on what the core metrics actually are, right? You've got different people calculating revenue in different ways. Don't just grab one of them and throw it in and say this is our now canonical version of metric. Get the people together to define what those KPIs are and agree on the actual calculations before you start codifying it into a semantic model. It's going to make life way easier down the road. You want to leverage what already exists, and this is something we'll talk about in a couple slides and ways you can automate this. and sort of save yourself some headache, but look at the reports you already have, your BI dashboards, your reporting tables, and reuse established definitions where there's already consensus. If the VP of sales has a dashboard that she looks at every Monday morning, those are probably the right metrics for you to include in your semantic model. So start reverse engineering that, thinking through it, and we'll show you how we can automate that. There's other tools that can read your Git repo and build that for you, but you don't need to totally reinvent the wheel. And the other thing is you want your LLMs to tie out to what people expect the numbers to be. So making sure that you are looking at your dashboards and reports in conjunction with this is really critical. You want to have ownership explicit because data models are never static. They are always changing. And you want to make sure that you have people who are responsible for maintaining a semantic model just in the way you would have someone who's responsible for maintaining a data pipeline. And again, we'll talk about ways that this can be automated to help notify when changes happen so that you know if your semantic model needs to be modified. It should all be documented and shared in plain language. Semantic model is basically just documentation anyways, but typically it lives in like a YAML file or something, and that can be challenging for non-technical users to understand. So you want to make sure that there is a way for them to interpret what lives within a semantic model, what are the questions or use cases it's meant for, so that they know when to use them and what they should expect the output to be when engaging with a semantic model. And then lastly is it's a living document. This will be a theme we're going to talk about a bunch, but you need to iterate. You need feedback. It is not going to be something that you build once and set and forget. It is constant testing, evaluation, building, testing, evaluation, building. And again, we'll automate as much of that as possible. So one of the things that we've seen from our customer base is that manually creating a semantic model takes a fair amount of time, right? You need to go through all of your dashboards and parse through all that code yourselves, and you end up spending days, if not more, just to build the model before you can actually start testing and iterating. Versus if you do this in an automated fashion, and we'll talk about a couple different ways you can do it, you're going to get 90% of the way there in minutes or hours. And that allows you to focus much more of your time on the testing process and refining process to get from 90% to 100% rather than worrying about manually writing the code for the whole semantic model. So I did want to just show kind of how SelectStar handles this problem. And we're not the only solution that can automate building a semantic model. We have customers who give Claude or ChatGPT access to their dbt repo and just say, hey, build me a semantic model. Customers are building them directly in dbt themselves or using Snowflake. But the way SelectStar does it is we basically start with your dashboard. So I'm going to use Power BI just as an example, but it works the same across all. And we reverse engineer the business logic that's happening from these different elements in a given dashboard or multiple dashboards. So we can come back through and see where is this metric coming from in the data warehouse, and we can actually see how it's being calculated. So we'll bring all of that into a semantic model that can be managed in the platform, which is really beneficial for the business users who don't know how to maybe read a YAML file. Now they're going to have a nice GUI to reference everything. So we can pull in relationships from the different tables that are part of this semantic model. Really critical because that's a manual process, understanding how to join these data sets together if you don't have primary and foreign keys. Something we can help automate, bring in your different entities and documentation, leveraging what exists in your dbt docs, or auto-generating it with AI. Pulling out the actual metric calculations, which is really critical. I think I showed you the payment efficiency score example, but bringing all of that into the semantic model, and then also bringing in example queries from your database, looking at what human users are running against these tables so that we give all of this context into a YAML file. So with the click of a button, you can create something like this off of your dashboards, which is going to codify all of this into a YAML file with your sample values, with your facts and dimensions and synonyms, and importantly, if we jump down to the end here, those metric calculations, which, again, really important to ensure that your AI tools align with your existing reports. Now, all of this lives in SelectStar, but it can also be published, which is really important because the semantic model should be standardized and leveraged in multiple places. You shouldn't have a semantic model living in each tool that is being managed separately. And I know there's a lot of work going on around kind of standardizing semantic models in the OSI initiative. So we can publish this into Snowflake. We'll be publishing it into dbt metric flow, I believe, next week. But really the goal is to make this kind of as extensible as possible. You can plug into our MCP server and use any tools you want to leverage this. So that's how we do it. But like I said, some of our customers are using Claude just right on top of their dbt repos to kind of automate this and get started. And then you can kind of start the testing and feedback process. So what happens once we've built that kind of first layer of the semantic model? Well, you need to validate against reality. So make sure that when you ask a question, it lines up with your dashboards, and that it answers the questions that you want it to answer. Maybe you missed a dimension that needs to be added in. That's really important for the business users this semantic model is designed for. Check for consistency. You want to ask the same question different ways, word it differently, and ensure that the LLMs are still able to get to that consistent answer. Check it with different tools, right? So maybe we use Claude, maybe we plug it into Cursor, maybe we use Snowflake Cortex. We want to see, are we able to get a consistent answer? And we have customers who are running automated tests on this. So they have written out an answer key, they build a semantic model, and then they are iterating that. So it's, the AI is kind of fine-tuning the AI and providing suggestions on what should be tweaked in order to get to the final answer that you need. You want to use real questions. So we've seen kind of two models of this. People who come up with questions where they're trying to break the LLM, which is important, but I think it's more important to use real questions that business users are actually asking, and build an answer key that reflects kind of your real world scenarios versus can we think of a really odd question that no one would really ask, but we're trying to beat the machine. You'll always be able to do that. It's not quite as productive and can take you down some rabbit holes. And then lastly is iterate quickly. Again, this is a living artifact. You want a feedback loop. You want to be able to refine models based on outcomes. And kind of that faster the cycle is, the more valuable the model is going to become. If you're waiting weeks to make another tweak, people are going to kind of lose interest and things won't progress as quickly as maybe everyone would like. So after you've kind of tested it and started to deploy it, you need to maintain this. And this is like any other data artifact that exists for your business. The business is going to evolve, your data model is going to evolve, so you need to consistently visit if your metrics still reflect the business reality. If a dashboard metric has changed, do we need to update the semantic model? And that's where the ownership comes in, is people who are responsible for looking at the results, gathering feedback, tracking history and changes of the semantic model. Because if you don't have an owner, it's hard to trust that it's going to get done. And once this gets rolled out, the goal is broad business adoption. And so you want to monitor it closely. If you're starting to see poor feedback results from your end users, you want to have rating scores, which are built into most tools, Select Star, Snowflake. They're all going to have kind of that, eval framework for you to review. You want to monitor for drift, so checking for discrepancies, both with data being different, but also if the definitions are different. If someone creates a new reporting table that documents revenue a little differently, you want to have that conversation. Do we need to modify ours? Do we need to create a new one and bring this in? And ultimately, you want to leverage metadata and automation as much as you can, because no one wants to be manually sitting there doing all of this. So having alerts on your dashboards that, hey, when this is updated, when there's a change to the metadata here, I'm going to notify the owner of the semantic model that this was generated from. That, hey, this has been modified. You might want to review, make sure that you're still happy with your semantic model. Both schema changes to upstream data and those reporting layers are going to be really critical for you to watch and make sure that you're kind of looking at that as you manage that semantic model throughout its life cycle. And it is a life cycle. You're building it, you're using it, you're evaluating it, you're rebuilding it. It's never really done. So we have customers who are leveraging AI successfully already. The semantic model adoption, still early on given all the changes that have happened, but we're seeing a lot of great success leveraging kind of the metadata and the context from Select Star with AI tools. So Amplitude was able to do a really detailed kind of impact analysis, just asking Claude and pointing it to the Select Star context about what's going to break if we were to deprecate this. And it had all the context to understand not only what was downstream, but is it important? Do we care? Is there anything critical that might break? Customers like PandaDoc are able to actually query their data, leveraging the context from Select Star and some other MCP servers. So starting to get to that natural language analytics. We're kind of starting to see the early innings of adoption and very excited about what this is going to unlock for our users moving forward. So with that, if you have any questions, happy to stay and answer them. We're at booth 120 if you want to check out more about Select Star and talk about semantic models. So thanks.